I just finished watching Centaurworld, and this is probably the most ridiculous show that I have seen in my life, and I am barely exaggerating here. I never had schizophrenia in my life, at least not yet, but watching this show really made me feel like I had schizophrenia. I will try to explain myself in this video, I say. There are two worlds in the show: human world, where obviously humans live, and so-called Centaur world, where most of the show takes place. In the show, a war horse from a war-torn human world, whose name is literally horse, magically ends up in a bright, cheerful land called Centaurworld, where she meets a bunch of centaurs. They all journey together and have adventures in order to bring horse to the portal between the worlds, so that horse could return back to her rider, whose name is literally Rider. I'm really not sure if anyone in the human world had an actual name, to be honest. On the way, Horse, who initially hated everything about Centaurworld, grows very fond of her new friends, and they become like a new family to her. Pretty standard stuff. Centaurworld isn't trying to be inventive. I liked almost everything about the human world. The animation of human characters and their designs, especially Ryder's design, look wonderful. It gives off 2000s cartoons vibe, while remaining something original. And unlike majority of other TV cartoons, Centaurworld looks pretty expensive. Animation is smooth enough, and static frames, usually used to save budget, especially in low budget anime, are almost absent here. The setting is a fantasy world where humans have to fight against the horde of evil minotaurs led by the Nowhere King, who want to destroy humanity. How I wish that an entire show was just about Horse, Rider and their adventure in that fantasy world. The creators of Centaurworld had everything. They had enough budget for good animation, they could afford some pretty great voice actors like Kimiko Glenn. And yes, I'm still looking at you, Hasbro, because you couldn't, or most likely didn't, want to spend some money to keep Kimiko Glenn as Izumun Bao's voice actress. Instead, you just hired miscast obscure Canadian actors with zero individuality. But let's get back to Centaurworld and Netflix. Why couldn't they just make a fantasy show about war between humans and the Nowhere King and his army of minotaurs and mutants, especially considering an amazing plot twist that we received in the final episode? I'm so disappointed, to be honest, because I pretty much dislike everything about Centaurworld, the world where centaurs live, not the show, and all the characters there. Each one of the characters who become Horse's friends are so unbelievably annoying, and their character design looks intentionally ugly. It is just bad. Maybe they were created this way to look like something a 3-year-old would draw, or a 33-year-old stoner. It's like Adventure Time, but every aspect is multiplied by at least 10. Speaking of humor, there was humor somewhere, definitely. But I guess I missed it. But to be serious, humor in the show is mostly based around characters running around and screaming the most ridiculous things imaginable, with the most annoying intonations imaginable. At times it's just hard to watch. Also, one of the creators definitely has a fart fetish, so there are tons of fart moments. I never really understood the appeal of fart jokes, like who are they even for, who genuinely enjoys them. I remember I hated these kinds of jokes very much when I was a kid. It is definitely someone's fetish sneaked into the show, like women's feet in Tarantino's movies. I am very sorry for this comparison. I really am. I never thought I would spend my time comparing Centaurworld to Tarantino. I guess life is full of disappointment. You might say that Centaurworld is made for kids, thus it cannot be judged too harshly. But I have at least two counter-arguments. Firstly, Centaurworld has enough fairly dark themes that are definitely for more mature audiences than little children. And secondly, being for kids is absolutely not an excuse. The Owl House and Amphibia are technically for kids too, however they would never allow themselves humor like in Centaurworld. And by the way, this show is musical. There are two pretty good songs, and these songs are Rider's Lullaby and The Nowhere King. The rest of the batch is either unremarkable or simply annoying. There are so many songs in this show, it would make Disney feel extremely envious. Characters express all their emotions through songs. The best episode of the show is obviously the finale. But apart from it, I enjoy the one where Horse learns how to get into other characters' memories and learns their background stories. I think Durpleton's backstory was the most interesting one. It was very touching and heartbreaking, and it explained why Durpleton had strong daddy issues. Speaking of Durpleton, he is the character who has a rare magical ability. He can talk to his own farts. I really don't know what to say about it. Seriously. Out of all Centaur characters, Wamawink is the most tolerable one. She didn't annoy me too much. At first I thought her name was Mama Wink, but then I googled it. They don't pronounce her name clearly enough in the show. Or maybe that's because I'm not a native speaker. That's probably the reason after all. I am genuinely amazed by how the show mixes some very dark moments, like Wamawink being a war orphan or body horror that would fit in a horror show, with absolute ridiculousness. You know, that's a gift on its own. The Nowhere King is a fantastic villain. His backstory makes him one of the best written villains in all of animation. He is absolutely terrifying, but the writers also managed to make him very sympathetic. The final episode, The Last Lullaby, apart from one terrible long fart moment, is gorgeous. Gorgeous animation and amazing story. Initially, the Nowhere King was a centaur from Centaurworld. He fell in love with a human princess and used an ingenious device in order to turn himself into a human. But he accidentally split himself in two, an elk and a human. Human half became a general, and an elk eventually became the Nowhere King. As I already mentioned previously, I loved almost everything about the human world, human characters and the Nowhere King. At the same time, almost everything about centaurs made me wanna vomit. Watching the show is like eating delicious Italian pizza straight from an oven, but instead of fine wine, washing it down with cheap vodka from a provincial Russian store. The feeling is very contrasting. Unfortunately, the unpleasant part was more prevalent overall, and even the amazing final episode couldn't make me like the show. However, I'm ready to give the finale at least 9 out of 10, because it was great. After I finished an entire show, I am, to be honest, still not sure who this was even made for. I think the creators were inspired by Adventure Time and really wanted to replicate its success. Maybe they did. Now I think it is time for me to confess. I only watched the first season of Adventure Time and never saw anything beyond. So I don't really know how similar the shows actually are, but something tells me Centaurworld did too many things wrong. As you already guessed, probably, I didn't like the show. But I absolutely understand why it might be appealing to some people. Anyway, thanks for watching this video essay/video review. If you have something to say about the show or my video, please don't hesitate to leave a comment. That would totally help my video to get picked up by YouTube algorithms, which is very important to me now. And see you next time.